Hello, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining today's webinar from Real Story Group. Today, we're going to do a little bit of a self-reflection and really ask the question, do you have the right vendor to get you to DAM 3.0? So my colleague, Jared Jingers, who you can see is online with us as well. He's going to take us through the heart of today's presentation. But as we get started, I just wanted to go over a couple housekeeping items of note here with the webinar and provide you with a brief introduction to Real Story Group. I do see some familiar names here on the list, but some new folks as well. So to those that are new, welcome, and to those that are joining us again, thank you for taking some time out of your day. We should have some time for a couple questions at the end, so if you do have that, you can enter those into the questions tab and go to webinar control panel. If we aren't able to get to those, we will be sure to email you after today's presentation. And then you will also be able to access these slides. We'll send those out within the next couple of days. And for our customers that are on the phone with us today, you'll be able to access a recording of this at any time in your subscriber library. So stay tuned for that. As we get started, I did want to just provide some high-level information about Real Story Group, who we are, and what our background is. We've been at this for almost 20 years now as an analyst firm, and the approach we take is different from other analyst firms you may be familiar with, some of the larger organizations that are out there. The approach that we take is that we never work for the vendors we cover in any way. So we don't advise them on their strategy or write white papers for them. Our focus is solely on technology, users, and buyers. And so we don't really believe in any sort of mystical quadrant or wave or anything like that. Our focus is really to provide you with some analysis on what's going to be the right solution for what it is that you're trying to do. And so that's the approach that we've taken within our research and also within the advisory services that we offer. Speaking of which, I do want to just mention the different ways in which that you can typically engage with Real Story Group. There's really three different levels. First and foremost is subscribing to our research. So in the case of DAM technology, you could subscribe to that particular marketplace where you'd have access to our hard-hitting evaluations. We have about 30 different vendors that we cover in the DAM research. You could also have direct access to Jared and the rest of our analyst team through some advisory calls. On top of that, we also actually have a stack advisory offering as well. This is where, if you're taking a more holistic look at your MarTech stack, we can provide you with not just all of the research that we provide in those areas, but then also taking a look, where are your redundancies, where are your gaps, and giving you some guidance as to some ways forward. And finally, we have our Stack Leadership Council, where we have a number of organizations, most of whom are in the Fortune 500, but not all. And what they do is get together 3 to 4 times per year. And really, it's a way to network with each other and learn from each other. Everyone seems to be going through the same struggles and challenges, but also having a lot of successes as well. So this is a confidential, vendor-free environment and a way to network with fellow MarTech stack leaders. So certainly, if you're interested in learning more about these offerings, we'll have our contact info for you at the end of the presentation today. So stay tuned for that. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to our Managing Director, Jared Jingers, who's going to lead us through today's presentation about DAM 3.0. Jared?
Thank you, Scott. And as always, thank you to all of you for being with us today. We appreciate you taking time as always. So today we're going to be talking about a theme that we've been talking about for some time now, and that's where are you on your DAM journey and how do you advance your DAM journey to the next step. But today we're going to take a little bit different slant on that conversation because I want to talk about how vendors, and in particular having the right vendor, can help you get to the next step on your journey and ultimately get to your destination, hopefully.
Hey, Jared, I just want to interrupt you 1 second and just get your presentation in full screen mode. Had a couple comments from the
oh my goodness, what a rookie
audience. There you go. Thanks.
Is that better? Sorry about that, folks. Believe it or not, this isn't my first time doing this. All right, let's try this again. So on our damn journey, we know that every single organization is at a different phase of their damn journey. Some of you are at what we call maybe 0.0 or you know, maybe a 0.5 on the scale, and working your way up to damn 1.0 with your first digital asset management system. Some of you have been at this for a few years and maybe would classify yourself as a damn 2.0 organization. And some of you have your sights firmly set on DAM 3.0. And hopefully I'm being told that I'm still not showing the right screen here. What is going on? I'm sorry. Let's just pause here just 1 second and make sure that we get this right. How are we looking now, Scott?
Looks great.
Okay. Again, sorry, folks. So, you know, like I mentioned, we know that like all of you are at different phases, right? And we know that we've been doing a lot of work as to trying to put some definition and some structure as to what is a DAM 1.0 organization, what is a DAM 2.0 organization, and what is a DAM 3.0 organization, right? And we hope that this structure can provide you with a bit of a roadmap, right? Or at very least, it can be a way for you to plot, you know, where you are on this scale, and then maybe start to think about what's next for you, and maybe an ultimate destination as a reach destination. But what we've found is a number of organizations that we're talking to, many of our clients, are telling us that, you know, making this jump is difficult for a variety of reasons. Number one, you know, getting your own internal ducks in a row, getting your own processes in place, and doing your own integrations. That's always hard to do from an internal perspective, but it's particularly hard if you have the wrong vendor. And as we'll go through today, we'll talk about how different vendors are fundamentally constructed with different use cases and different scenarios in mind. And some of these scenarios are really aligned to the 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 phases. And so if you have your site set on a 2.0 destination, you're really going to want to make sure that you have a vendor in-house that was built to satisfy those 2.0 scenarios. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're seeing this more and more as we talk with our clients recently, that they're beginning to question, you know, is the DAM that we selected a few years back or a decade back, in some cases, is it still right for us? And in many cases, it's not. The good news for you as buyers is that there are tons of options out there. You know, there are hundreds of vendors out there who call themselves digital asset management vendors, and we think that there are around 30-ish significant players in the marketplace. And you know, we are constantly watching those and some others, and constantly choose to add and subtract from this list, but this is the list that we're watching avidly right now. We try to put them into some broad tiers here to try to make sense of this marketplace, because it is confusing. And you know, kind of taking that car analogy just one step further, if you'll bear with me, you know, if sometimes we get into the it's really easy to look at the DAM marketplace and say there's a lot of commoditized features. They all can do X, Y, and Z, so they're all kind of the same. It's kind of like all cars have 4 wheels and a steering wheel and windows and bumpers and that kind of thing. Sure, they have some commonalities, but the devil's in the details here. You know, just like the car marketplace, you have, you know, the Lamborghinis and Ferraris at one end that cost a lot of money, and then you have some other car brands that I won't bash on too much, that are at a much different price point, right? Just like the DAM marketplace, if you look at the upper end of the marketplace, some of those, the total cost of ownership can easily reach into the millions of dollars a year. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, you could have a DAM in your organization and maybe a real point solution for, we're talking thousands of dollars a year. So it's a dramatic difference in terms of cost, dramatic difference in terms of complexity, dramatic difference in terms of use case targeted, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So I mentioned those use cases, and this is the graphic we always use to talk about those use cases or scenarios. And I use that term use case and scenario interchangeably in many cases. But when we look at any of the marketplaces that we evaluate as analysts, beyond the DAM marketplace, and we do this for web content management and email marketing and the CDP marketplace and the CRM marketplace, all of these marketplaces, we have canonical scenarios that we evaluate the different products and vendors that produce them as to their suitability to these different use case scenarios. In the DAM world, we have about 13 or so different use cases that we use to evaluate each of the vendors that we cover, each of those 30 vendors. If I put them into 5 big broad buckets, we have brand management, marketing asset management, enterprise asset management, publishing, and video and audio management. Now, beneath there are the individual scenarios that I want to call your attention to. And if you've been following Real Story Group for any length of time, you know that we always say, when you are trying to figure out which vendor should be on your shortlist, you need to start, number one, with self-identifying with your scenarios. What are you trying to do? And once you understand that, you can go find a vendor that is fundamentally built for those scenarios. And then that's how you play matchmaker. That's how you get that right shortlist in place and then really do your due diligence on that shortlist. But let's talk about how these scenarios really align with the different phases as we talk about this DAM journey. Let's start with DAM 1.0. And as I mentioned earlier, I think many organizations that we talk to are still not at a DAM 1.0. Many of you are, many of you are way past 1.0, but many of you are still trying to cobble together your situation, with a sometimes I call it fake DAM, right? So you have file repositories that serve as a DAM. Maybe they're cloud file sharing tools that serve as a DAM. Maybe it's shared drives that serve as a DAM, and maybe it's just a combination of all of these different things that you're cobbling together, right? And so the prospect of DAM 1.0 is, can I get a single system in place that serves as a single repository to manage images, video, audio files throughout their entire life cycle? Right? And so for many organizations, this is that step up from that shared drive situation or those cloud file sharing, the boxes and Dropboxes of the world. It's a step up from that. But in many cases, those organizations at DAM 1.0, their DAM is just that. It's just another destination to put files and pull files from. So it's typically disconnected from your larger technical stack. It's a standalone system. Now it's a major win if you're going from 0.0, getting to 1.0 is I don't want to diminish that. That is a heavy lift for many of you, and it's a critical step in this process. But in essence, you're creating another silo, right? And again, I don't want to poo-poo this too much, but for many of you, that isn't the end destination. For some of you, it might be, though. Some of you might say, that's all we need. Just getting our assets in a single location is our final destination on our journey. And if it is, then there is a number of vendors out there for you to consider. Those of you who are thinking about 1.0, you probably are thinking about these scenarios. So the ones I highlighted in green here are probably your primary scenarios. So I'm going to jump right to the middle column here under enterprise asset management. The idea of photo and asset library, just that single repository for your photos and for your assets, a place to go, a place to apply some basic asset management capabilities, tag assets in a manner that they're retrievable and easily findable, and allow you to then do something and then track what you do with it. Right, that's some basics there. And then the other kind of typical 1.0 scenario that we see is basic brand management. You all have assets that relate to your brand, and you want to make sure people are using those brand assets correctly, and you want to apply some controls to that. So using your DAM to help you with that is a typical DAM 1.0 scenario. Now, there are or a few others that I want to highlight at this phase. Depending on your industry, even at the 1.0 stage, you may be thinking about things like product asset management. If your organization is very product centric, maybe you're in the retail space, in the CPG space, in the FMCG space, where products are so important, your asset library is probably going to be structured in a way that very much aligns to your product structure. So finding a product that was built with that in mind, with product asset management in mind, is probably going to be important to you. Also, I mentioned some of you may have 1.0 as a final destination. In that case, you might be thinking about your DAM as a media-based asset knowledge management tool. And in that case, if your end goal is just to have this be an internally facing system and not connected to other MarTech tools, that's fine. And that should be a scenario that you should be considering. Likewise, if you're in a highly regulated environment, you're going to want to have a tool that was fundamentally built to handle those environments as well. So if you're in banking or finance, any kind of finance or pharma or medical, you want to be able to consider that as well. And so to get to 1.0, nominally all these vendors that I'm showing on the screen right now can serve as a basic photo library and do basic brand management. They all can do it, right? Now, where the devil's in the details here is you want to find something that's the right size for you. There's a real danger that people overbuy in 1.0. So find the vendor that's the right fit for you, and then really take into consideration some of those industry specific things if that's important. So you're going to want to kind of make sure that you find something that's the right size at the DAM 1.0 phase, but with an eye to the next phase, which is DAM 2.0. When I talk about 2.0, I'm talking about DAM as a MarTech service. So here, typically, we're thinking about DAM not as a disconnected repository anymore, but something that's truly connected to my larger technology stack environment, right? And typically in this phase, if you're an organization that's reached this phase, your DAM is a critical part of your workflow. So there's going to be integration with upstream systems and processes, as well as downstream systems and processes. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But typically, it's a one-way flow of information that ultimately reaches your constituent touch points. Sometimes we talk about this in the context of a MarTech Mall, where if you look at your stack of technologies that exist in many of your marketing environments, you have lots and lots of different technologies, but certain technologies rise to the forefront as what we call anchor stores of your MarTech stack, right? And for years, DAM wasn't considered one of these anchor stores, but for the last, at minimum 5 years, but probably for some of you, going on 8 to 10 years now, DAM has been a critical piece. People have understood how important your assets are to your MarTech story, and there's no doubt in my mind that DAM is at the table here. It needs to be considered as a foundational anchor store in your stack. So for those of you who think you're at the 2.0 tier in your journey, I think the biggest considerations for you at this point are advertising and marketing asset management, right? This is thinking about how do you manage your assets for MarTech purposes, to create experiences at every different touch point. That's fundamental to what you're trying to do. But as part of that, you're probably also considering what happens upstream, right? You're thinking about not only just final assets, but what about those work in progress assets? What about those components of assets that get bundled together to create another asset? And what happens throughout that creative process? So that tends to emerge as a really important 2.0 scenario for many of you. And then depending on your industry and your business and your content type, and some of you are going to consider digital and print publishing more important. Some of you have periodicals and catalogs that you're working on. Some of you are much more video and audio and time-based asset centric, where you need review and approval capabilities and even editing and assembly capabilities within the DAM or associated very closely to your DAM. And so I highlight those as well. If those are important to you, you'll want to consider those scenarios at the 2.0 phase as well. But I think the most noticeable or important characteristic of a DAM 2.0 stage in the journey is the integrations with systems of engagement. So sometimes we talk about systems of engagement. There are tons of systems of engagement, but the primary ones that people reference are, like web content management systems for you to create web experiences, marketing automation tools to create, email and social campaigns, and then social publishing tools to publish to different social channels. And then this idea of your DAM powering these systems of engagement is really powerful and is, indicative of those organizations at a DAM 2.0 phase. And the good news here is that in the 2010s, many of the vendors that we evaluate have spent a lot of time on these types of integrations. So many of these vendors have some really strong pre-baked integrations with many of the web content management tools and the social publishing tools and the marketing automation tools that are out there, and others have some really powerful APIs that connect to a myriad of different tools. So that's something to pay attention to really closely when you're evaluating vendors for your 2.0 scenarios. But more and more, as I alluded to earlier, 2.0 stage isn't just talking about the downstream output. It's not just stuff going from your DAM to your web content management system and ultimately out to your websites and apps and other web touch points and email and all these other digital touch points. You also need to consider what happens upstream, right? So here's an example from a CPG workflow where we're talking about integrations that need to be made between a product information management system where product data syncs up with the DAM, or maybe packaging data and assets sync up with the DAM. But even if you're not in the CPG world, think about your possible upstream integrations. Everyone has a creative suite of tools where your creatives are working, and you might want to create a solid integration between those work environments in the DAM. Likewise, you have a number of review and approval workflow type tools that exist within your organization that you probably want to integrate with your DAM at various points, whether that's mid approval or at the end of an approval or at a variety of spots in between. And so these types of integrations are really just so critical to the DAM 2.0 phase. But again, I want to highlight it's not just downstream. It's definitely downstream, but it's also upstream as well. And then from a DAM landscape perspective, if we look at the marketplace as a whole, I think we'll find that your mileage is going to really start to vary here. I can't check the box with all of these that they all have the same types of connectors to web content management systems. And if they do, they might have experience with one or two web content management systems, but it might not be your web content management system. That could be a problem. Likewise, the integrations between creative suite tools and workflow tools, your mileage is really going to vary. So you're going to really start to pay attention. How well does this vendor fit within our stack, within our environment? And that's what you're going to need to test very carefully as you go about this. But it starts with, do I have vendors that were fundamentally built to exist within in an environment where content and data is flowing into my DAM and out of my DAM? And that brings us to DAM 3.0. DAM 3.0 is a term that is starting to gain some traction. My colleague Teresa Regley has been using this term for quite some time, and we've been talking about DAM 3.0 for a number of years now. Other people talk about it in more of a notion of a content hub. Sometimes we call it more of an omni-channel content platform situation when we're talking about the vendors. But from an evolution, I think it's a nice way of thinking about it from a DAM perspective. Once we get beyond just that MarTech service, how does our DAM help to provide content throughout the entire organization in an omni-channel way? And so let's talk about what I mean by this. So when we start talking about DAM 3.0, we need to expand our minds a little bit here and expand our definition about what is managed by this omni-channel content platform system. So I want you to think a little bit differently than traditional DAM situations where you're just thinking about audio and video and that type of asset. I want you to think about media, certainly, but I want you to think about narrative, content, and data, all as first-class object in a single system, right? I want you to think of a system that has component level management for omni-channel activation, so you can start to manage some sophisticated compound relationships between sub assets and really manage them as parts of a larger asset. I want you to be able to manage effectiveness of these assets and their pieces so that you're measuring success beyond just traditional campaign levels, but actually at the asset level. And then to that point, I don't want this to be in a DAM 3.0 world. It's not just a one-way flow of information. It's not just that, like we talked about in 2.0 typical scenarios where stuff is coming into the DAM and coming out. In 3.0, sure, stuff is coming into the DAM, going out, but also there should be data coming back in to tell you, okay, what was most effective? Which assets perform better than others? In what context? So that my creatives, the next time they go about creating experiences for your constituents, they can have more data at their fingertips to say, I can make an educated decision based on what we did last time to say this is likely to perform better. And that's a pretty powerful thing. And so as we look at, for any technical folks on the line today, this is a reference architecture model for the 2020s that we like to use. I'll call your attention to that middle bar here, or the bottom bar on this screen, because these are our systems of engagement in many of our organizations today. Sure, you have your web content management tool, your email tool, your social tools. Many of you have your service and support tools, and some of you who are very sales centric, you have your customer relationship management, your Salesforce automation tools. But what I'm suggesting as a future situation is you have this notion where certain fundamental building block elements are managed in these foundational platforms. So things like your customer data, things like your product data, things like your omni-channel content and your journey rules are managed low in your stack, so that you're able to power all of these other systems from a foundational perspective. And this is the future. And I'm confident in this being the future because there are many organizations that we're working with that have their eyes set on this, and there's quite a few that are actually doing this today. There are some of the most leading organizations in the world, the most cutting edge organizations who are thinking about structuring their stacks in this way and are truly managing their data, their content, their assets, and their rules at a foundational level with this notion of providing omni-channel experiences at every single touch point. And so if we think about DAM 3.0, I want you to challenge yourself and say, is that right for us? Do we need an omni-channel content platform? And if yes, what should that omni-channel content platform technology be? And I bring that up because there's a lot of different vendors out there who want to be your omni-channel content platform. There's web content management vendors who want to be your omni-channel content platform. There's CRM vendors, there's marketing automation vendors, there's marketing operations vendors who want to be your OCP. And there's a lot of DAM vendors who want to be your OCP. And from where we sit today, I think DAM vendors have a little bit of a head start in this because they were built with media and images and audio files as first-class objects, and many of the systems were built with some of these complex relationships in mind, the parent-child and sibling relationships, and I think that gives them a bit of a head start. And so we've been watching the DAM space evolve in that for some time, and in many cases, I think the vendors were a little bit ahead of buyers when it came to touting their capabilities in this sphere. But as I mentioned earlier, the buyers have caught up. And so many of our clients are coming to us and saying, we need to find a true omni-channel content platform. And so the scenario for many 3.0 situations is that I point them to is this integrated marketing content hub, right? And the vendors that we are evaluating in the DAM marketplace here are the ones that are truly built as object-oriented systems, right? I mentioned those compound asset management relationships with, between parents and children and siblings. They're highly extensible information models behind the scenes. Ideally, they're built off graph-based databases. They have advanced asset and media management, but they also treat text and HTML as first-class objects. And then they start to think about tracking usage data in meaningful ways and presenting that back to the user in meaningful ways. So this means that you're creating a system from its foundation to be able to manage these complex relationships and do so in a full cycle. Now, when we look at the marketplace, I will say that many of the vendors have heard your requests. The buyers are asking for this now, and so there's a bit of two camps here. There's the vendors who are a little bit ahead of the game, and now buyers are catching up, and then now there's a bunch of vendors who are putting a ton of energy into making their products more omni-channel and thinking about expanding their definitions of what are assets, and so there's been a lot of momentum there. But what's happening is there's a bit of a divide here, because as we sit here today, there's probably only about 6 vendors on this screen that get high marks in that integrated marketing content hub use case scenario. And so for those of you who are clients on the line, I encourage you to go check out our research and you put that scenario into your real quadrant shortlist generator, and those are the vendors who are building their products with that scenario in mind and doing a pretty good job of it as we sit here today. Now, stay tuned with our research, because like I mentioned, a lot of these vendors are evolving, and they're choosing, should we go that route? Should we try to be an omni-channel content vendor, or should we just continue to skate our lane and just do DAM 2.0 really well, or in some cases just DAM 1.0 very well? And there's no right answer there. It doesn't really matter which way you choose. But my point to all of you on this call today is, be careful. Make sure you have a vendor whose roadmap is aligned with your own. Make sure that you don't pick a vendor who has no intention of getting beyond 2.0 if your intention is to get to 3.0. Or at very least, make sure you go into this with your eyes completely wide open and understand that, if you pick a vendor that is really strong to get you over the hump to get to 1.0, know that you might have to evolve into something else to get you to 2.0 and ultimately 3.0. The good news is that there are options. There are lots of options, and there are lots of good options. And I hope you continue to check out the research, because we put a lot of new updates in there about this very topic. And I've been having these conversations every single day with our subscribers, and I encourage you to start that conversation with us, because we'd love to help you out. With that said, I think we're out of time. I'm going to apologize for my technical issues at the outset, but in lieu of that, if anyone has any questions, I don't think we have time to do that today, but please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'll follow up with you, offline. You can just email me at jgingras@realstorygroup.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I'd be happy to get back to you with any questions that you might have. In the meantime, if any of you are interested in the research, go download a sample, try it out, go try the tools out. We have a number of tools that help you make these decisions and help you understand what stage you're at with our Real Score effectiveness model. And then when it's time for you to get a shortlist ready, we have something that we call our Real Quadrant shortlist generator that helps you shortcut your due diligence time and get you to that right shortlist as quickly as possible. With that, thank you all so much for joining me today. If I don't speak to you before the end of the year, have a great New Year's and happy holidays to everyone. And thank you for all of your support and attention throughout the year. Thank you. Have a good day.